Hi, everyone, and thank you to those who have joined us today. Welcome to Personalizing the Customer Journey, a Fireside Chat with Wilmac. Just a few housekeeping items to review before we get started. All participants have been placed in listen-only mode with your microphone muted. The session is being recorded, so it will be available to watch on demand afterwards. That link will be shared with you in an email tomorrow, and it'll also be posted to Wilmac's YouTube channel and our social media accounts, including LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. We want to encourage you to please participate by commenting in the chat window on the side of your screen and by answering any questions that we have throughout by chatting about them in the comments section. So besides that, if we can't get to the question that you submit, we'll be sure to follow up with you individually afterwards. And just a quick request that when the session is over and you exit the platform, to please submit your feedback by answering the 2 survey questions that pop up on your screen. So I'll jump right into the presentation now by introducing our experts. So first of all, I'm Emily Miller. I'm the Director of Marketing at Wilmac, and I'll be moderating the session today. Next up, we have Steve O'Brien, Wilmac's Sales Director for Contact Center Solutions. Steve has worked in sales for 16 years and has spent the last 6 selling contact center software and call recording solutions to various industries. Next to him, we have Mr. Charlie Snedden, one of our sales engineers. Charlie has a devout history working in workforce management and has transitioned into the sales engineering role about 8 years ago. And his experience, it includes solution design, implementation, training, customer care, and more. So these two have an impressive and diverse amount of experience in the customer experience and contact center space. And I'm really excited to see where their fireside chat goes during this session. So before I run through what they'll be discussing today, though, I wanted to make sure our audience knows who we're representing. We all work for Wilmac, which is a technology company based out of Rochester, New York, and that's where I'm coming to you from today, as you can tell by my gloomy background. We also have a Canadian entity called Wilmac Canada, which is based out of Toronto, which is actually where Charlie is coming from. And both Steve and Charlie work with our global customer base, though. Now, to tell you a little bit about what we do and why it's relevant to this personalization topic. Now, Wilmac is a white glove service provider for contact center and customer experience solutions across a variety of industries. We're a consultative, vendor agnostic, and we're a reseller. And we've been working in this space for quite some time, as evidenced through Charlie and Steve's background. Now, at the core of our business, At the core of our business, we believe in understanding where your organization is at and working with you to find a solution and develop a plan that will help you achieve your business goals. So that's my spiel. Thanks for sticking with us for about 3 minutes so far. But now we're going to get into the good stuff. So Charlie and Steve kind of broke down their discussion today into 4 main sections, and that'll cover what personalization is, what makes an experience personalized, some of the latest tools that we know to increase personalization, and what personalization can do for your business. Then we'll review any of your questions and we'll give you our best answers. So I just wanted to mention one more time now before I let Charlie and Steve dive in that you are free to enter your questions or comments throughout the session. Whatever we don't have time for, we will make sure to follow up with you afterwards. So we'll get things started and I'll hand it off to Charlie to start chatting about topic 1 as we go fireside.
Thank you very much. And just before we start, this being about personalization, I just want to shout out to Jim, Steve, and Chris who are attending today, but unfortunately you won't be able to speak with us. Maybe we can catch up later. But personalization and what it means and what are personal experiences, well, lately I've had a lot of that. For those who know me, I've recently moved to Toronto from Scotland. And in doing so, I've had to change bank accounts, change service providers, change mobile phones, everything. Anything you think that you would use on a daily basis, I have had to uplift and shift to different vendors here in Toronto. And what I can say is that my bank, HSBC, have made it a very easy and personalized experience for me. And what I mean by that is that they were able to understand that I was new to the country I didn't have any banking history with them, and they just took me aside in an interview and spoke to me about what I needed from a bank. Now, that information obviously went into a massive CRM platform, so the next person I spoke to, they knew who I was, what I was doing, and why I was doing it. But more that was key for me is that I was able to interact with them on different platforms. So messaging, through their website, emails, voice conversations, and each one of those, they knew exactly why I was calling and what I needed from them, and they made it so much simpler. I think one of the key things that really made it for me was the ability to interact with somebody on a message, a chat, and then seamlessly move that into a voice call. And what I mean by that is that when I was on the chat session, they were able to provide me with the IVR options, which took me to another person that I could speak to, or in some occasions, the actual person I was speaking to on the web chat. Now, where that could be improved many times is that we now have conversational-led chatbots, or interactions with voice agents, if you will, and those things are getting more and more powerful. Been recently doing some work with an organization called Poly AI, and it's almost seamless. You wouldn't know that you were actually interacting with a chatbot. And maybe that's what makes things personalized and experienced. Personalized experiences is the ability to interact any way that you want to choose, be it voice, be it chat, be it messaging from other platforms, and not necessarily get stuck behind an IVR or even a chatbot. And I guess
Yeah.
positive experiences is something that we all have. Steve, is there any that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. And Charlie, some of my positive experiences kind of overlap, what you were talking about, which is, seamless omni-channel transition, right? You're web chatting with somebody, and all of a sudden you have too much to say over web chat. And my personal experience is with the company Carvana, who most people are probably familiar with, but buying and selling a car with them is very smooth, but it's still buying and selling a car. So lots of paperwork going back and forth, lots of the dealer buyout stuff, contracts, everything like that, and really each one of those let's call them actions is suited kind of for its own channel, right? I mean, something down and dirty and quick you can handle over web chat, but then maybe we're going to talk about a VIN number and some other stuff that might be better verbalized. You can switch right to that phone, and they did. Um, or last, if you needed to, memorialize like an application or something that you need to be able to reference in the future, email, right? So that was all at the agent's fingertips, which is impressive. There's Charlie and I are going to talk a lot about technology today, but at the same time, we're going to talk to each other about the people behind the technology. So in this case, I felt it was personalized because they give you a dedicated rep. The experience takes a couple of weeks. Lots of back and forth. It's a high dollar transaction, and there's a lot of boxes to check. And this rep was on my side the whole time, which was great because we could pick up right where we left off, and it saved a lot of time, built a lot of trust in between us, and again, that the element of personalization. It was up to me how often and when I wanted to communicate with them and how I wanted to communicate with them, which was very convenient. And then, it really was a beginning to end nice experience because they did incorporate a rather lengthy survey once everything was wrapped up. And, I did answer, I gave some thoughtful answers, and you could tell whatever technology they were using, Charlie, that it captured the important parts of it. And so they referenced my own feedback on the next set of marketing emails and outreach to me, which, it doesn't get a whole lot more personal than, I guess, saying what you've already said, right? So I mean,
Absolutely.
it's great, and we've all had fantastic experiences, but with COVID and staff shortages and everything like that, we've certainly kind of had some negative experiences as well, and it would only be fair for us to share those, right, Charlie?
Well, absolutely. The frustrations that we can have with experiences that are negative are probably more powerful sometimes than positive experiences. When we talk about our brand experiences with our colleagues, our friends, even posting it onto social media now, people tend to actually deliver their negative experiences. And with that, I've got to talk about my cell phone provider. previously I talked about how HSBC knew who I was, why I was calling, what account services I need, that type of thing. Well, every time I contact my mobile phone provider or cell provider, as I need to call it today, they always want me to reconfirm who I am. Why am I calling? What's my mobile device number? That type of thing. And I find that really frustrating because, well, there's a couple of things. Firstly, when I'm authenticating on the app, they've got my biometrics. So my phone knows who I am. Why can't their app understand who I am and why I'm calling? They have my mobile number, they have my mobile device. They could even probably tell me exactly where I am today if they wanted to. But why do I have to reconfirm everything when we've done that? And it's really sometimes more, I'm going to say, difficult to interact with them because the next time you're going to have to do it again. So you might put off that
Right.
reason for contacting them. You mentioned there, Steve, that you followed up on some of the surveys and they incorporated that into your feedback. Imagine those surveys were more personalized to you. So rather than it being a generic, were you selling a car today? They said, Steve, you were selling your, I don't know which vehicle you were selling, but that is something that shows you as a customer they're listening. What about yourself? Have you had any problems with negative experiences lately?
Yeah, I have. And it is funny you bring up cell phone. When I broke into sales, I was working for kind of a startup carrier, and so we paid close attention to what we call NPS scores, Net Promoter Scores, and as irony would have it, Charlie, I think it was the 41st and 42nd industry, which were right at the very bottom, were cell phones and airlines. Not too surprising. Airlines are pretty tough to deal with now. Just the whole flying thing is not pleasant. So. Uh, Not a specific airline I'd like to name, but if you're talking to them, a negative experience I had was, if you're in the middle of a dispute, you're on hold, you're really trying to accomplish something, and really you're just trying to get back to where you were. You've already paid for this service, and they're not delivering on the service, and then it takes a toll on your time and resources going above and beyond trying to get it resolved, right? And so for me, what was frustrating was I'm sitting on hold and doing what we all do and playing with my phone. And all of a sudden I see an email come through from that very airline saying, would you like to upgrade your status? It'll be X amount of dollars or X amount of points. And, it was very rosy and happy and, we're buddies and everything like that. Right. So it kind of just left a bad taste in my mouth that it was like a little bit disingenuous. Right. I mean, here I am fighting just to get the service that I paid top dollar for. And meanwhile, they're trying to get more out of me while this is happening. It just left me feeling like it was a one-way street, which to me is almost the opposite of personalization. Um, and so, something I thought about is, at Wilmac, we try to kind of paint the picture, offer like the art of the possibility, right, Charlie? So what we talk about is combining, what we know about technology and the roadmaps and what's available now, but also, trends in training agents and things like that. And so when we talk about the art of the possibility, it's good to imagine solutions. And in this case, why couldn't there be an automated SMS sent to my phone while I'm on hold, apologizing to me for being on hold, or giving you some sort of token? Here's a $5 voucher for a free bag of chips on the plane when you finally get on the plane, right? There's a lot of ways that they could, for very cheap or even free, smooth that over a little bit. So, we, as much as we come across these experiences, it's always good to think about solutions as well.
Mm-hmm. You reflect on the airlines there. Again, having to move to Toronto, I was with a specific airline. I'd booked tickets, and you're right. Today, when I called them the last time, I was on the phone for over 4 hours on hold. And on that 4 hours, it was, we appreciate your call. We know you're waiting. We are busy. But imagine you were able to kind of divert that into what I discussed earlier, like a customer-led voice assistant, where they can have a natural language conversation to you. Why are you calling? Do you want to upgrade your seats? Are you just calling to determine whether or not you've got the right booking? That is something that can also help. And again, that's a reflection of personalization because you're having a natural conversation with a voice bot and you don't realize you're doing that. But I guess maybe it's just me. Maybe it's my age that I am now. Maybe my expectations of customer service or interaction with brands is much higher than it should be.
Well, I think that our expectations, we shouldn't bring them down too much. I think it's important to keep those expectations up. And it's ironic you're talking about natural language processing and virtual agents, like you mentioned Poly AI a couple times, and some people might look at that and say, well, that's a robot. That's not very personal. Well, the ironic thing about personalization is that I guess personalization is personal to everybody, right? So if you feel like you have a virtual attendant who can access your information right away and meet you where you want to be met, that creates a good personal experience for a lot of people. So that's I guess just a little bit of irony, but yeah, to your point, Charlie, personalization, it's not just, hey, it might help us along a little bit. This is a studied thing, and we know it's very important. So what I wanted to talk about was a graphic up on the screen. It should show you basically a poll that was taken as far as what's the most important things to consumers when they call into the contact center. And I can tell you, after I tell you what the poll is, it's actually continuing to trend upwards. So what you see there is you see personal interaction at 40% on the left-hand side. That's tied for second, only 2% behind, quick problem resolution. So what does that tell us? That tells us that people want to be recognized and helped along just as much as they want the problem resolved quickly. That's a big opportunity that a lot of people are missing right now. And just to kind of how we got to this point, and I mentioned that the trend is still going up. When we look back, let's say the last 20, 30 years, in the 90s, when people were deciding what product or service to buy, the economy was good. .com boom was going on. There was some disposable income, and really quality was king back then. So you would look for a great product or service. You'd find the top one that separates itself from the others, and you would buy it. In the 2000s, we had Amazon come along. Walmart expanded tremendously. You can now get a plethora of like quality goods across a whole spectrum. And the economy wasn't so hot. We had the housing crash and everything like that. So price became king. So we moved from quality to price. Well, now moving up into this next generation, if you read the news articles or studies or anything like that, the new generation is all about experiences. They don't want to wrap up all their income into a mortgage for a house. They don't want to buy an expensive car. They want to travel. They want to go to restaurants. They want to mingle with one another. Happy to be in crowded cities, and that kind of lines up with the personal experience, right? They're more concerned about having that experience versus just a quick resolution.
I think you're right there. Steve, you're talking about the new generation is all about experiences. That reminds me of a survey I recently reviewed. And we can share the survey after the webinar today, but they say that 2/3 of 20 to 30-year-olds today have higher expectations in service or brands than what they're actually receiving today.
Yeah, that sounds right. That matches up with the polls and my observations. So yeah, that's a good point, Charlie.
All right, awesome. Sorry, everyone, joining you as the voice from the beyond. It's just Emily. But I wanted to thank Charlie and Steve. I think that was a really great start to the discussion. You both obviously have had some positive personalized experiences with large brands, but you also talked a lot about the negative impact it can have when done poorly. So let's move into our second topic about what makes an experience personalized. So I will hand it off to Steve now to get that started.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Yeah, we touched on it a little bit in the first section, but personalized experiences mean something different to a lot of people, and it crosses a lot of different areas. Maybe your customer journey was seemingly tailored for you, the way you came in, how you were helped. Great, that feels awesome. Or, to Charlie's point about all the CRM and customer details, maybe your agents have everything in a single pane of glass, and it automatically is accessed when they open up your interaction, whether it's a call or a chat. And as I mentioned before, we love the technology, and the technology is empowering us, but there is also some burden on the agent to learn and to learn how to be a agent that offers that personalized experience. And the first thing that comes to mind are these training trends that, one, know your customer, right? So people are being taught to practice empathy, to figure out what the customer's needs are and how they're feeling, the sentiment, things like that. Know their history. That's goes without saying, Charlie. That's what we talked about. We want your cell phone carrier to know that you have a Samsung S21. There's no reason they shouldn't know that, right? One thing I found really interesting that a lot of the top contact centers are doing now is training their agents to practice active listening. They do exercises and trainings, and really that kind of speaks to the fact that we've kind of lost our focus down to a pretty small span of attention, right? So if you can learn how to be an active listener, odds are you're not going to drift off after 30 seconds. And then, we've talked about it a couple times, but, access to self-service channels. Me personally, I think that's as a personalized experience. I like to go in and have access to my own data and be able to, maybe do some self-service and things like that. So, that's what makes an experience personalized for me.
Yeah, I think the access to the self-service is really important, especially when you're maybe speaking to so many individuals or interacting with voice bots. But each one of those particular touch points, be it a person or a voice bot or an email or whichever, you're giving them information. And I don't recall, Steve, ever telling you that I had a Samsung Galaxy S21, but maybe I did, but you've certainly been listening to me. And I think that reflects what brands and organizations need to do. They need to get to know you as a person rather than a number. I remember back in the day when I used to work with a large organization for TV subscriptions, they were just numbers. But similarly, I also remember when I was a kid growing up, I worked in a fish and chip shop. When somebody called with the CLI, the caller display, I knew what that telephone, I knew who was on the other side of that call. I knew what food they wanted to order on that particular day. So for me, it's all about getting to know the people that you're dealing with. And it's not just a case of fixing the problem at that time, but it could be understanding what that particular person's life is going through at the moment. But I think more importantly, the kind of positive brand experience leads to words of mouth kind of communication. Who's had good experiences, who's had bad experiences, and we've mentioned a few today. But it's definitely something that we should be able to talk about more. Generally, we talk about bad experiences and promote them more often than we do good, but we should be promoting our better experiences to our friends, to our colleagues, so everybody knows what they're doing. And I guess that's where organizations like my cell phone provider could improve, because they have the ability to know that maybe I've called 5, 6, 7 times about the same problem. Right. They should understand that I'm really not happy with what's going on. I'm calling all these different times, but reflecting on what I said before, I have to repeat every time why I'm called. They should know where we were in the conversation and where we left off.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say, no, you're absolutely right. And the thing that's funny is maybe they are making efforts. Maybe they see that you've called in many times, and maybe they're routing you to a more skilled agent. That doesn't matter. At the end of the day, your satisfaction is down, so they're not understanding you, right? It's somewhere they're missing the mark. Who knows what it is? Yeah. That's something that organizations have to look inward and figure out what their brand is, how they want to connect with their customers. So yeah, I mean, you totally nailed it. And I think of Wilmac. I think of our internal processes. And one thing that's important to us is we want everybody in every department to have access to customer data, system designs, customer history, things like that. And the reason why is I might get a customer calling me, the sales guy, right, asking about a technical design. Or somebody might call Charlie, an engineer, and ask him about commercial pricing. Now, he might refer it over to me if it's complicated, but he can certainly look up a quote and say, actually, what we quoted you was this. And the reason I'm telling you this is there's a reason that they reached out to me or Charlie. They chose it. Maybe it was random, but odds are they chose to reach out to somebody for a certain reason, and to be able to resolve their question or their problem, no matter who it was. That leaves a pretty good taste in their mouth, because it kind of satisfies their expectations, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I think that's good to think about as you, again, look inward as an organization. What does personalization mean to your customers?
Absolutely. And I think, personalization in various aspects just isn't just knowing the account details and where to get access to that information. If you think about like my favorite shirt brand, for example, they have my collar measurement. But a bank doesn't necessarily need to know my inside leg measurement to authenticate me. But
Yeah, that's right.
it's definitely different for different organizations. But again, I reflect on the mobile apps. Lots of organizations now have mobile apps, and you authenticate with them either with a PIN, which is private to you, or your facial recognition or your biometrics. But all that information is stored on your device, which can easily be passed over to somebody. So you don't have to re-authenticate when you have that conversation with an organization or brand. You've already done that. They just need to ask you a secret question. What is your most favorite car type thing? And then they know that you're speaking to the right person. But there's always that
Yeah.
chance that, sorry, I was going to say there's always that chance that you could be interrupted. Your web connection could drop out. Your cell phone provider could go into a black spot when you're walking between the buildings, that type of thing. And it could be that you're having to authenticate 2 or 3 times a day when you're getting inadvertently logged out.
Yeah, and that, kind of circling back to that art of the possibility, this technology doesn't exist that I'm aware of yet, but I think everybody sees the trend of two-factor authentication taking over, whether it's Salesforce or even Microsoft apps now want you to do that multi-factor authentication. And I don't see why there couldn't be a way that when you authenticate yourself via your cell phone, it can't send a data packet to the, contact center, automatically prompting a screen pop with all your stuff. That doesn't quite exist yet, but Charlie, that would kind of eliminate that authentication, overlap. So I'm sure somebody is working on that. But the funny or ironic thing, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but personalization really can just mean so many different things, and that's why we are trying to gain a deeper understanding. At Wilmac, we're trying to gain a deep understanding of it, so we can relate to our customers, and our customers are at the same time trying to figure out what it means to them. So it's always good to walk, lockstep with the industry, with the technology. But hopefully these examples we provided kind of shed a little bit of light on personalization as it relates to contact centers anyway.
All right, great. Thank you guys. We're about halfway now through our fireside chat. I hope everyone's staying nice and warm and cozy, no matter where you're tuning in from. But kind of as our halfway point, I did have a poll question that I wanted to present to our audience. Let me pull that up right now. Okay, so the poll question reads, where is your organization currently at and using personalization during the customer journey? Now, your options are already doing it, you're implementing it soon, starting to explore it, haven't even started. So I'll give everyone some time now to answer that. I see some stuff coming in. I always say this is the time now. I need some Jeopardy music to play in the background.
You should have told me beforehand. I could have got that done for you.
Yeah.
All right, just a few more seconds.
Or if we have in the back in the UK, the countdown.
All right, perfect. I'll close it out now. We'll share the results. So it looks about 25% of you are already doing it. So good for you, great job. And the other 75% are starting to explore it. So some people browsing, it sounds like, which is great. Hopefully you're enjoying this conversation so far. So thank you to everyone who participated in that poll, and we love to hear more about your experiences with personalization. So please feel free to comment on them in the chat box on the side of your screen. So like I said, hopefully you're staying cozy with us, but I'll move us now into topic number 3, where we'll talk about the tools that are available to you to improve your customer's journey through personalization. So I will now toss it over to Charlie to start it off.
Thank you very much. And just reflecting on that survey, 75% of the attendees are beginning to explore personalization for a customer journey and what that means. Let's just take that and kind of put a frame around it at the moment. When you're trying to explore things, where do you first go? Nowadays, I think Steve, you mentioned before that there's like 80% of people will Google their first part of their journey. So no doubt you have Googled, and maybe that's how you found this presentation today. Where do we start for personalization of a customer journey? So I think one of the key things there is that what the Google allows us to do is understand what keywords are being used and what people are searching for specifically when it comes to personalizations of journeys. But I think one of the more exciting things that are happening alongside Google at the moment, and maybe this is something you would you talk about as well, Steve, is ChatGPT is one of the key things where, again, natural language allows us to search for better items. I guess if we put in ChatGPT today, what does personalization of a journey mean? It would probably give you a few options because, as you said, it's very different for different organizations. But the key thing there is the start of the journey. People have started on Google, they've started on ChatGPT. They maybe even went to Amazon for a product that they want to have a look at.
Sure,
But
sure.
it's all about the data, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. It's a cliche, but data in, data out, right? However high quality your question is or whatever your input is, odds are that's what you're going to get back out. So one of our close vendors, one of our close partners is the first to market with their product called CX Expert, and they've actually have a native integration with ChatGPT. So they're right on the cutting edge, which is awesome. But the reason ChatGPT works so well with this particular product is it's integrated right to the knowledge base of the customer. And so that's cool and everything, but the reason it takes you over the top is that maybe you don't know how to ask the question that you want answered, right? So ChatGPT can, let's say, mechanize the keywords and actual gist that you're trying to get through, so the knowledge base or wherever that information is can be fed back to you. And then conversely, it's going to feed it back to you in plain English, right? It's not going to give you some segmented bullet points. So it'll formulate a human-like answer, and typically will be more complete than a segmented search. That's really pretty cutting edge, and we're seeing a ton of questions come in from potential customers saying, how can I use this? And when we show them or explain it, light bulbs go off in people's heads. So it's pretty exciting.
And when you talk about a knowledge base, customers have access to knowledge bases as well. Frequently asked questions, FAQs are typically on websites. But as you said, when people are asking a question, they generally formulate a human-like question, a conversational piece, a question that you and I would maybe say to each other. But when you're looking at an FAQ, it doesn't have that exact question. You could ask the same question 10 different times. You could search for it within FAQ, but still not find the right answer because of the keywords that they've used. You could just imagine that you've gone through an FAQ. The system has understood what questions you've looked at, what answers you've looked at, and then you're having a conversation with somebody on a web chat. Having captured that information, the person on the web chat or the voice bot could say, are you still interested in this item or that item? That if you've visited that site or you've had conversations with people before, they should have that personal data and the points that the data points that they need to use to make your journey more personal.
Yeah, no, 100%. It seems basic nuts and bolts, but it's still a point we're missing sometimes. And that brings me to just a quick talk about customer journey. And customer journey, I think most of you out there know what it is, but let's just really give a quick overview. And that's kind of capturing the data points at various stages through the interactions with a customer service outfit, which is how you came in, what channels you're using, where you transferred, time to resolution, and then some satisfaction at the end. So this first point has been a blind spot forever for customer journeys. And that first point is, Emily, if you bring up that graphic, you'll see that more than half the time, 85% of consumers go to Google as their first stop for customer service. So what does that mean? That means that maybe you find out that people who search for the keyword Jeep four-wheel drive are 30% more likely to buy a Jeep than if you search for Jeep miles per gallon, right? So that was a data point we didn't have before, but all of a sudden we say, wow, that's really important. That reflects on your value prop to your customers, but also your position right within the technology. So it's super important and it's being missed. The second part of that graphic there talks about how only 15% of businesses believe that Google consumers are the first stop. So that's one of those mismatches that we've talked about, Charlie, and expectations, where if you can close the gap I mean, that should be a pretty easy gap to close to improve things.
I know when I'm looking for things, be it products or cars or services, I do go to Google first. It might be different if I'm wanting to share an item with somebody. Just a couple of days ago, I was speaking to Emily, and I shared a link on Amazon to a product, but I didn't go to the website for that. I went to Amazon or Google.
Yeah.
And more recently, you talk about Jeep. I'm looking for a vehicle here in Toronto. Not that it's conducive to easy travel, but I want to do some exploring in the summer. And to do that, Jeep is an ideal example. I've visited several Jeep retailers online, and they're, I would say they're quite clever here. They have the conversational bot. It's like, hi, this is Jenny. How can we help you today? But I did recognize over a period of time, it's like, hey, I see you've been here before, or something to that language. This is the model you were looking at. Are you still interested in discussing that any further? And I know that they're capturing your details. They're taking your name, they're taking your mobile phone number, they're building a database where they can actually send you information about the next product. So I'm really keen to understand whether or not they'll take that and send me a personalized invite to a next, say, launch of a vehicle, or if it'll just be generic.
Yeah, and it's the old thing about providing education or providing something for your customers. So maybe they will feel not obligated, but would like to return that favor, so to speak, right? So if they teach you something and they say, hey, I saw you looked at the Cherokee limited edition, there's only 2 different features and it could save you $3,000 if you went with this trim or whatever, right? So I agree with you on that, Charlie.
Very nice. All right. Like both of you have said, personalization, it's a pretty broad topic, but I wanted to thank you both for sharing how you see it fitting into contact centers. I'll move us now into our last conversation topic. We know what personalization can mean to the customer now, and we've discussed it, but what can it do for your business? So I'll let Steve start things off.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things it could do for the business, and some of them are apparent and obvious. Some of them take some crafting. But first thing I want to circle back to that NPS again. I mentioned it kind of at the top of the hour, and that's called Net Promoter Score, and that's basically let's say for the bare bones of it, how happy are your customers, right? How happy are they to recommend? And really what I wanted to point out is call centers historically, they were called call centers. Now we call them contact centers, of course. They were historically just drains, right? Revenue drains on the organization. It was a necessary evil. People didn't like, businesses did not like investing in this technology because that's what it was. It was just a sunk cost. But as we gather the technology and empower our agents, we've seen a change in that. And there is a way to kind of drive direct revenue now, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Back in the day, I used to hear people refer to them as cost centers rather than
Yeah,
call centers,
sure,
because
sure.
it was just providing a service for their customers. It was a single contact, and it was, you know, uh, talking about customer service. They've had a problem, a package wasn't delivered, or their TV wasn't switching on, that type of thing. But now call centers or contact centers are more kind of in tune with the rest of the organization. Marketing has a lot to do with the contact centers now. You've got your service, you've got your support, you've got your sales. These are all
Yeah.
things that can be improved. If we can educate our frontline agents to do that active listening that you were talking about, maybe show a little bit of empathy, then they'll be much smarter at cross-selling or upselling, or
Hmm.
selling a new product to a customer who's maybe just called in for something obscure. But because we know that person, because we know their lifestyle, their details, the history that they had with the organization, we could give them much more than them just calling up and registering a problem.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome point, and that's kind of an interesting, let's say, cross between um, direct sales and driving top line revenue while offering that personalized experience. So that's a pretty great goal to shoot for. Now I want to talk about brand preferences. we talked kind of the history of people's buying habits and what drove them to certain ways. And Charlie and I have been talking about a couple other things, and one thing we noticed was that there are so many, let's call them equal level of quality products and services out there now. Let's talk about, again, we'll go back to cell phones. In the US, we'll say T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. You'd be hard pressed to distinguish one from the other at this point. You really would, whether it comes to the hardware they offer or the service they offer. So what do? You have to figure out how to have your brand stand out. And in that case, if you're meeting somebody along the way, every step they want to be, you're making them feel warm and fuzzy. You feel cared about, right? That's going to create a sticky customer. And a very important metric is lifetime value of a customer. Right. So if you have the sticky customer, they're going to keep coming back. And, one of the examples we had talked about, Charlie, was like a self storage, right? Mini storage, whatever you want to call it. How do we drive revenue from personalization and data points in storage? And it's hard to wrap your head around a direct solution, but again, just kind of visualizing that art of the possibility, right? And maybe they do some surveys or studies or talk to their customers directly, right? And maybe a customer says, okay, the reason I'm using your mini storage is to store my college age son's belongings while he's home from college or something like that, right? And okay, that's a data point you can use. What do you do with that data point? Maybe you send a discount or a promotional offer to that family to ensure that they come back that next summer, right? Or maybe they're a senior in college and you say, okay, well, they've kind of exhausted this summer college storage here. How do we, make an impact either with these parents or to try to keep the college age student going? And that's really up for their brand to decide, what they're offering or how they'll offer it. But my point is, when you personalize an experience, not only do you get that sticky customer, but you can actually expand your opportunity too.
I think you're right there. And in talking about storage and inevitably shipping, reminds me of when I moved here to Toronto last month. I needed storage. I was pretty much selling everything in my house or moving it with me. But my storage facilities, well, they know that I'm not coming back for a few years. So they won't need to interact with me. They won't need to send me an email saying, oh, you can increase your storage. They know it's not going to change for at least a couple of years. But what I will say is the shipping company, I contacted a few, and as before, you have to tell them where you're going, what you're doing, why you're doing it, how long you're going to be away for, that type of thing. But there was one organization specifically that I liked, and how they got me as a sticky customer is they attached, similar to your Carvana presence, they attached an individual, if you will, to me. So every time I called, they knew who I was. So Michelle knew who I was. She knew what I was doing. She knew my dates. She knew everything. So every time I called with a question, then she was able to answer it. I hadn't even placed an order with her before that. So I'd communicated and had various conversations many, many times. And I think if I had that same cause to interact with a company who was giving me different people and I had to repeat everything again, I wouldn't have bought. So I think because of that individual, I placed an order and my stuff's still on a boat. It's still coming to me in Toronto. It's still out there, but it's definitely something that I wanted to do. And I think, when you look at it, personalization in any form can improve your brand's recognition within the customer base, even within the industry. And inevitably, I think you've referred to it here as well, Steve, that it will increase your bottom line, your revenue within the organization. So a couple of things that I was thinking about is, well, we've talked about storage, be it short-term, long-term. If you understand the habits, as you mentioned, kids going off to college, university, maybe the family needs an extra room because they're expecting children, that type of thing. There's different things that you could get to if you knew your customer better. But I used to work with a vacation company or holiday company, and one of the things that they kind of like to do was understand the customer's holiday habits. Do they go in the summer? Do they go in the winter? That type of thing. But what they did try was at the end of the vacation, at the end of the holiday, they would give them a week and then maybe give them an email survey. I think if that email survey was more personalized, it knew who they were, why they were off on holiday, how long they were off on holiday, but more importantly, just maybe even it was a call, I think they would have got a better return on that, and they would have been able to make that customer more sticky with their vacations, because you've probably felt it yourself when you've come back from holiday, you get the post-holiday blues. So what are you
Sure.
looking at?
Yeah.
Holidays. That's something. That's a period of time where you can capture that individual.
Yeah, that's a great
Negatively.
point. And yeah, and maybe they sold you the package, so they know if you went parasailing or not, right? So why doesn't that survey say, did you break your leg? Or are you okay? Something like that. But one final thought on that as well, Charlie, is that you might be looking at this and saying, well, how can a bot or a virtual agent be a personalized experience? Or you might be looking at it and saying, well, Charlie and Steve have given two examples of dedicating a customer service rep to yourself. Doesn't that fly in the face of trying to cut your labor? Not really, because it's the tools that the agents are empowered with that allow them to be a personal customer service agent for you while they're helping out 30 other people, right? And that's that seamless switching, that's keeping all your details in order and everything like that. So, my last thought would be that personalization is going to be different to each brand, and it's up to them to figure out what technology they need and how they offer that to their customer. So that's kind of my last thought.
Great.
But yeah,
Thanks.
Charlie,
Thanks,
I
Steve.
enjoyed it. Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thank you both. I'm going to hop back on the camera now as we wrap up the main portion of our session and move into our Q&A. Thank you to everyone who's listened, who stuck with us. And we'll go into those questions now. So we've got a couple. Starting with this first one, what products do you guys currently have that can help with automation?
Do you want to take that
Yeah.
one, Steve, or?
Yeah, sure. So, automation, a lot of times will be synonymous with self-service at this point, in some regards, right? It could be something as easy as you need your balance and you call up the bank and, you enter your account numbers and you get your details back, right? So that's a form of automation. Or it could be as complicated as maybe you have a high-tech analytics engine running in the background to look at all your interactions and boil them down and make recommendations for some quality assurance or coaching type programs, whereby you might coach the person, give them a grade, and then maybe it'll circle back later on to see if that training helped, right? So that's a form of automation where we used to do things manually, that can be replaced, not only to free up some time, but it's going to be more accurate and it's going to give you a more holistic picture. So there are a couple different choices there. Do you have any thoughts there, Charlie?
Well, again, I think really the self-service. Lots of people like to self-service. They would rather do that than wait 4 hours on a call to an airline, for example. And I mentioned at the top of the hour as well, some work that I've done with an organization called Poly AI, and their conversational bots, that I've seen, far outstrip the performance of some of the bots that I've actually interacted with. It's natural language, and you can ask it, to make an appointment with your doctor, or that thing. And because it knows that you're self-service and it knows who your doctor is, it would say, yeah, sure, Charlie, we can make you a 12:30 with Dr. Smith on Wednesday. And that has cut out the need for a receptionist or appointment booker, but more importantly, it is personalized because it knew who you were, who your doctor was, even though it was a bot, as you mentioned before, Steve. Kind of ironic thing, a bot isn't necessarily personalized, but it can be, and we can make it that way.
Yeah, and just one other thought. Sorry, the question asked if we had any products. So, just to give you a little bit of specifics, one of the coaching product I mentioned, which kind of gives you a curriculum and then follows back up on that curriculum to make sure it's working. That's a product from Calabrio called performance coaching. And then, I referenced another form of automation, which is, grabbing interaction details and really crunching down those data points and making recommendations. And that's a product out of our CX1 catalog, driven by what we call our Enlighten AI engine. It's machine learning / AI that's going to look for trends. It's going to look for insights to give you. And so we do have a couple of different products for that.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Okay, looks like we have one last question before we close out and let everyone get back to their day. But this question says, how do I calculate NPS?
That's a quick answer. NPS is off the top of my head, it is percentage of promoters minus percentage of detractors. So how you define those, I don't quite know the nuances of it, but there is a general formula, and you do see similar companies kind of raise into the top almost every year, and it kind of lines up with who you'd expect. Apple, most years is right on top, one or two. And I think we all know people that use Apple products across the board, right? And that kind of speaks to a level of satisfaction.
Yeah, it's generally derived from a simple question, just one question, and that is, would you, promote your would you promote this company to somebody in your family or somebody you work with? It's very simple. It's a yes, no question. As you say, a promoter or a detractor. If they said no to that, then that's a detractor. If they said yes, then obviously that person would be classed as a promoter.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. Thank you to those who submitted questions, but I'll wrap us up now. So up on the screen, we have Steve and Charlie's contact information, along with ways that you can engage with Wilmac online through social media, especially our LinkedIn. The recording of this session will be posted online, so please consider reposting, liking, and following our page if you're interested in seeing more content from Wilmac. One other thing I did want to mention before we close is that Wilmac will be attending Enterprise Connect next week down in Orlando, Florida from March 27th to the 30th. We're actually exhibiting at booth number 1543. So if any of our webinar attendees are heading down there, make sure you stop by, say hello, let us know. Besides that, if you aren't attending and you're interested, we do have a full conference pass that we're raffling off later today. So please send us a message if you're interested in being entered for that. And also we have a $500 discount code that you can use if you're interested in registering. And that code is just WILMAC, WILMAC. So that's that. But thank you to everyone who attended our session today and participated. We hope you took away some new ideas as how you can leverage personalization in your organization to personalize your customer's journey. So next time you're interacting with a brand, just take note of how they personalized your journey, and then consider how you can leverage that in your organization for your customer base. So Charlie and Steve are always open to speaking with you and ironing out any of ideas and plans that you may have for your center. So please feel free to contact them with that information that's up on the screen. So one last reminder to please answer the 2-question survey that pops up on your screen when you exit the session. Thank you to Steve and Charlie for sharing their knowledge with us during this fireside chat. And thank you to everyone who joined us. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.